with your reading of the 7 realities.
Start recording. Okay. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai. The 7 realities: existence, love, sacrifice, renunciation, knowledge, control, and surrender. I give no importance to creed, dogma, caste, or the performance of. Sorry, you have to move a little left. Sorry. Can you just move the screen a little left, please?
It's actually correct. Maybe you have moved the window, probably.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll just start again. Existence, love, sacrifice, renunciation, knowledge, control, and surrender. I give no importance to creed, dogma, caste, or the performance of religious ceremonies and rites, but to the understanding of the following 7 realities. 1. The only real existence is that of the one and only God, who is the self in every finite self. 2. The only real love is the love for this infinity God, which arouses an intense longing to see, know, and become one with its truth, God. 3. The only real sacrifice is that in which, in pursuance of this love, all things body, mind, position, welfare, and even life itself are sacrificed. The only real renunciation is that which abandons, even in the midst of worldly duties, all selfish thoughts and desires. 5. The only real knowledge is the knowledge that God is the inner dweller in good people and in so-called bad, in saint and in so-called sinner. This knowledge requires you to help all equally as circumstances demand, without expectation of reward, when compelled to take part in a dispute, to act without the slightest trace of enmity or hatred, to try to make others happy with brotherly or sisterly feeling for each one, and to harm no one in thought, word, or deed, not even those who harm you. 6. The only real control is the discipline of the senses to abstain from indulgence in low desires, which alone ensures absolute purity of character. 7. The only real surrender is that in which poise is undisturbed by any adverse circumstance, and the individual, amidst every kind of hardship, is resigned with perfect calm to the will of God. Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai.
Avatar Meher Baba ki Jai.
Avatar Baba ki Jai.
Hey, good to see you,
Jai
Ravi.
Baba.
How are you?
Welcome back, Ravi.
Jai Baba. Jai Baba.
Welcome, Ravi. Jai Baba.
Thank you, Ashok. Thank you, Jai Baba. Thank you, Mamaji.
Yeah, quickly to address a question, tech question that I had from Mamaji. 1 second. Yeah, so
Karthik,
there was a question. Yeah.
Soma is having problem with login. Is there something different or?
No, we haven't done anything different.
I had problem. I don't know why.
You had problem too?
Yeah.
What was the
I was not
message?
able to connect. I was not able to connect, but now I'm able to connect. I don't know what happened, but
Can you
she
kindly message her to say she should just try again?
Yeah.
I think it is a Teams problem. I also did not connect first time. Then I switched off and then reconnected. Then it came up.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay, so we are on the third chapter on ego. But before we get there, I'll just check on. I'll just give some input on this soft copy ebook reading. So my recommendation is use Adobe Reader, and this is what we are using on the call. And you just have to enable the toolbar, which is called the comment toolbar, and then it gives you quite a lot of features that you see on the top. If you see where my cursor is, right? So you can create a
We are
comment.
not seeing it.
Oh,
We are
you
seeing
aren't?
only the 7 realities page.
Yeah. So I'm just,
Oh,
I'll do it again.
Can you share the page number?
No, I'm just trying to
Okay.
show it on the same page of 7 realities.
okay.
Yeah. So you see, do you see the,
Yes.
do you see my cursor now
Yes,
on the
yes,
top?
yes.
Yeah. So you have a comment feature, you have a highlight feature, you have an underline feature, you have a strike through.
Okay.
Strike through is basically the strike away, and strike through with a comment. You can superscribe something. You can just put your own text box and write whatever you want, some text that you want to remember. And you can use a pen and just use free flow on your mouse and actually draw something. So there's quite a lot of stuff that's possible. You can even add shapes. So you see
Okay.
here, you can even add shapes. So Ashok,
I think,
please note you can add your prisms.
sorry, I have to disturb you. I somehow I'm still seeing only the real surrender, the 7 realities. Something
Yeah,
wrong at my end.
I'm on that page only. I'm just showing, I'm using my cursor, and can you see my cursor? Which is circling,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just walking through the menu items on the toolbar, which is called the comments
Yes.
toolbar.
Okay.
And
Yes.
then after that, you can actually go and search your comments as well. So you can search your comments. So it's pretty good, decent, but it kind of is very slow compared to Kindle, right? So you've seen me struggle with that as well. So
Okay, thank you.
yeah, with that, let's go to the third chapter. Is Soma sorted? No, she's not on. Oh, there she is, just as we were.
Hi, yes, I
Yeah,
finally
I've just,
managed. Good morning.
yeah, so I don't know what happened. So anyway, so we were just barely starting. So we are on page one. We stopped last week at page 175, which is the third chapter on ego. Let's just refresh a little bit. Any other thoughts and questions? Did people do the uh, rereading and deal with your egos? Do you have some insights? Do you have some questions before we start? No. So let me just read the subtitle so that it kind of refreshes where we are. So we saw how ego lives through the idea of mind. It's a possessive idea. Then the forms of ego, right? Idea of equality. So I think this was very, very powerful. So the pseudo sense of equality, and I think we talked about it as well last time, on how this is something that's played by the ego. And then there is a detailed exposition on the two complexes and how they work: superiority complex and inferiority complex. And then there's a distinction made out between surrender and inferiority complex, right? Surrender happens to a perfect master, and that's significantly different from mere inferiority complex. And we stopped at intervention of master, right? So if there are no thoughts or questions, I'll continue from this, the para next to it. Okay, so let me continue. So the favorite, one of the keywords that keep popping up again and again, adjustment. Subtitle is Adjustment to Master Results in Dissolution of Complexes. The superiority and inferiority complexes have to be brought into intelligent relation with each other if they are to counteract each other. This requires a situation in which both would be allowed to have their play at the same time without requiring the repression of one in order to express the other. When the soul enters into a dynamic and vital relation with the master, the complexes concerned with the senses of inferiority and superiority are both brought into play. And They are so intelligently accommodated that they counteract each other. The disciple then feels that he is nothing in himself, but in and through the master, he is enlivened by the prospect of being everything. Thus, at one stroke, the two complexes are brought into mutual tension and tend to annihilate each other in the attempt the disciple makes to adjust himself to the master. With the dissolution of these opposite complexes, there comes a breaking down of the separative barriers of the ego in all forms. With the breaking down of the barriers of separation, there arises divine love. With the arising of divine love, the separate feeling of I, as distinguished from you, is swallowed up in the sense of their unity. So this is quite dense. I hope everybody's getting it.
Karthik, I just have one thought which comes from this is that ultimately we all have to think that all are one.
Yes. Just give me 1 second. I need to mess around with my power cord. Yes. Yeah, it's the feeling of unity. But why I said dense was I was trying to see how the two complexes are fused by the intervention of the master. I think that I'm not really very clear. Anybody wants to help me there?
Probably taken as conflicting forces, superiority and inferiority, when we're talking about opposites in the world of reality.
They are brought into mutual tension and tend to annihilate each other in the attempt the disciple makes to adjust himself to the master. So is that in relation with the master that both those complexes work, or is it in general? Because superiority and inferiority work in general. So that was where a part of my confusion was.
If I can sort of speak my mind, it will be in general with respect to your own ego. Because the master is beyond ego, right? So it is basically our own sanskaras and ego.
Okay.
Probably somebody throw some light.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
If you take a few of the conversations and the life of Mandli with Baba, he used to put one against the other in some isolated examples. So to work out their ego, he used to manage a quarrel between the Mandli people, and then it used to get resolved. So maybe that's an example of how inferiority and superiority complexes are brought together and then they get nullified by the master. Maybe that may be an example. I'm not.
That's a good example. And I think so you're referring to in relation with others, but engineered or kind of affected by the master.
So he works on your ego. He knows whether you are in the superiority or inferiority complex, or at the particular stage, what is your sort of complex, and then tries to work on that and make you realize or nullify that. So that is the work of the master, to understand the disciple's condition and then try to help him out on that score, I think.
Super. Yeah, and I think, like you said, it's quite often not a continual state that you are in one or the other, but you're constantly in different stages with different interactions, different people, right? So you might have a superiority complex at 9 a.m. and then have an inferiority at 10, and then, it depends on what you do in your life. That's the way I see it anyway. So let's see the analogy of a driver and continue our read. Analogy of driver. For a car to move toward its destination, a driver is necessary. However, the driver may be susceptible to strong attractions for things that he encounters on the way And he might not only halt at intervening places for an indefinite time, but also get lost by the wayside in pursuit of things that have only temporary charm. Thus, he might keep the car moving all the time, but without coming nearer the goal, and he might even get further away from it. Something like this happens when ego assumes control of human consciousness. The ego may be compared to a driver who has a certain amount of control over a car and a certain capacity to drive it, but who is in complete darkness about its ultimate destination.
So that last sentence is a very good definition of ego.
Yeah. The ego may be compared to a driver who has a certain amount of control over a car and a certain capacity to drive it, but who is in complete darkness about its ultimate destination. So if you watch what I'm doing right now, I select and I click. That's it.
Okay.
And I can change colors. I can do many things with the highlight and stuff. So yeah. For a car to reach its ultimate destination, it is not merely enough to have someone who can drive the car. It is equally necessary that this driver should be able to direct the car toward the destination. As long as the movement of consciousness is under the full and exclusive domination of the ego, the spiritual advancement of the person is jeopardized by the natural tendency of the ego to strengthen the separative barriers of false imagination. So, because of the ego-centered activities, consciousness remains enclosed by the walls of its own creation and moves within the limits of this Mayavic prison. If consciousness is to be emancipated from its limitations and rendered adequate to serve the original purpose for which it came into existence, it must draw its directive momentum not from the ego, but from some other principle. In other words, the driver who is ignorant of the ultimate destination must be exchanged for another driver who is free from all the allure of accidental things encountered on the way, and who centers his attention not on the rest stations or side attractions, but on the ultimate goal of non-duality. The shifting of the center of interest from unimportant things to truly important values is comparable to the transference of power from the ignorant driver to the driver who knows the destination. Concurrent with this gradual shifting of the center of interest, there is progressive dissolution of the ego and motion toward the truth. Ego attempts integration around false idea. If the ego were nothing but a medium for the integration of human experience, it would be possible for one to get established in the final truth merely by carrying further the activity of the ego. But while playing a specific part in the progress of consciousness, the ego also represents an active principle of ignorance that prevents further spiritual development. The ego attempts the integration of experience, but it does so around the false idea of separateness. Having taken an illusion as the foundation for the construction of its edifice, it never succeeds in anything but the building of illusions one upon another. Arriving at the truth is actually hindered rather than helped by the function of the ego. The process of arriving at the truth can be fruitful only if the integration presided over by the ego is carried further without bringing in the basic ignorance of separateness. So that's an important line again. The process of arriving at the truth. The wrong integration and the wrong identification is the problem. As long as human experience lies within the limitation of duality, integration of experience is an essential condition for a rational and significant life. The subtitle is Master becomes new nucleus of integration. But the ego as a nucleus for integration has to be renounced because of its inevitable alliance with the forces of ignorance. There arises then an imperative need for a new center of integration that will steer clear of the basic ignorance of separateness and will allow free scope for the incorporation of all values formerly inaccessible to the ego center. Such a new center is provided by the master, who expresses all that has real value and who represents the absolute truth. The shifting of interest from unimportant things to important values is facilitated by allegiance and self-surrender to the master, who becomes the new nucleus for integration. Union with master and realization of truth. The master, when truly understood, is a standing affirmation of the unity of all life. Allegiance to the master, therefore, brings about a gradual dissociation from the ego nucleus, which affirms separateness. After this important crisis in the life of an individual, all mental activity has a new frame of reference, and its significance is to be gathered in the light of its relation to the master as the manifestation of infinite truth, not in the light of any relation to the ego center as a limited I. The person henceforth finds that all acts that flow from him are no longer initiated from the limited I, but are all inspired by the truth working through the master. He is also no longer interested in the well-being of the limited self, but is only interested in the master as representing universal and undivided life. He offers all his experiences and desires to the master, reserving neither the good nor the evil for the limited I, stripping the ego of all content. So what's the concept that we have also heard of, which we can relate to this, is the provisional working ego, right? Is that referred to here further down? We'll see. Yeah, I'll continue. This advancing bankruptcy of the ego does not interfere with the process of integration because the function is now performed under the new center of the master as representing the truth. When the ego nucleus is completely bankrupt and devoid of any power or being, the master as truth is firmly established in consciousness as its guiding genius and animating principle. This constitutes both the attainment of union with the master and the realization of the infinite truth. As the ego gradually adjusts itself to the spiritual requirements of life through the cultivation of humanity, selflessness, and love, wholehearted surrender, and offering oneself to the master as truth, it suffers a drastic curtailment. Knowledge of true self is the subtitle. It not only offers less and less resistance to spiritual unfoldment, but also undergoes a radical transformation. This eventually turns out to be so great that in the end, the ego as an affirmation of separateness completely disappears and is substituted by the truth, which knows no separateness. The intermediate steps of slimming down the ego and softening its nature are comparable to the trimming and pruning of the branches of a wild and mighty tree, while the final step of annihilation of the ego amounts to the complete uprooting of this tree. When the ego disappears entirely, there arises knowledge of the true self. Thus, the long journey of the soul consists in developing from animal consciousness the explicit self-consciousness as a limited I, then in transcending the state of the limited I of human consciousness through the medium of the master. At this stage, the soul is initiated into the consciousness of the supreme and real self as an everlasting and infinite I am, in which there is no separateness and which includes all existence. So I'm brimming with that question. Why are we not talking about provisional working ego here, Kama?
Well, I think that is on page number 254, this
Yeah,
dynamics
yeah.
of spiritual advancement.
I know it is in
So
discourses.
that is
So my question is, why is it not linked to this?
When you say why is it not linked, winning in your
As in the
trilo,
three
or
chapters, as in the three chapters on ego. I think one of the most powerful techniques that Baba has given is the
right?
use of the provisional working ego.
I
So I'm
I
surprised that
think
it's not showing up here.
no, the chapter is not showing in the seven sub themes.
No. It's not in the three chapters that we're reading on ego, the three parts.
Oh, okay. Why it is not there? You're talking about the discourses as such. Why this provisional working ego?
Yes.
Because discourses was dictated by Baba between 1938 to 1942. So each chapter, like for example, when he was probably dictating, because it's in the Mayor Baba journal, and the Mayor Baba journal was basically a compilation of articles by different people, but the main message was from Baba, Mayor Baba journal. So that discourses is a compilation of 4 years of, we had 5 parts or something initially, and then it all got consolidated. So I think that Baba gave different messages at different times and different periods. He would say the same message in a different way. So that is the reason probably we didn't see that. And also, I didn't include this provisional working ego in this particular love and ego theme, because in the 7 sub themes that we derived, the first 6 are right knowledge, and the 7th sub theme was yoga and meditation. And I think probably this provisional working ego terminology comes in the chapter on dynamics of spiritual advancement and the deeper aspects of sadhana, where you talk about karma yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga thing. But I think that it would be nice to read what the dynamics of spiritual advancement says about the provisional working ego. So shall I read this particular 2 paragraphs on page number 254? It says, because we are talking about superiority and inferiority complex. So the last paragraph of page number 254, the subtitle, Constructing New Ego Subservient to Master. To avoid inaction on the one hand and pride of action on the other, it is necessary for the aspirant to construct in the following manner a provisional and working ego that will be entirely subservient to the master. Before beginning anything, the aspirant thinks that it is not he who is doing it, but the master who is getting it done through him. After doing the task, he does not tarry to claim the results of action or enjoy them but becomes free of them by offering them to the master. By training his mind in this spirit, he succeeds in creating a new ego, which, though only provisional and working, is amply able to become a source of confidence, feeling, enthusiasm, and go that true action must express. This new ego is spiritually harmless since it derives its life and being from the Master who represents infinity. And when the time comes, it can be thrown away like a garment. There are thus 2 types of ego: one that can only add to the limitations of the soul, and the other that helps it toward emancipation. The passage from the limiting ego of the worldly to the egolessness of infinite life lies through the construction of a provisional ego generated by wholehearted allegiance to the master. The construction of a new ego entirely subservient to the master is indispensable to the dynamics of spiritual advancement. Let me read the last line again. The construction of a new ego entirely subservient to the master is indispensable to the dynamics of spiritual advancement. So I think this is very clear that um, where it is said that the guidance of a perfect master is most important, especially it is mandatory that from the sixth plane to the seventh plane, without a perfect master, like a PhD guide, the PhD guide has to pass your thesis. So without that, your thesis might be the best, if you think, but if he doesn't take you to the sixth to the seventh plane, that is a mandatory aspect. But I think for most people, this is about surrender. See, there's a lot of talk, in another forum, where I belong. There is this clash between Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, and so on and so forth. People talk about you have to love Baba, you have to love Baba, but you have to define what do you mean by loving Baba? How do you love Baba? So personally, for me, I use the 7 awakenings, the checklist I call, which helps me to, because loving Baba is all about relationships with animate and inanimate matter in your waking state, So the other part I wanted to mention was the last paragraph, the last line you read in the current reading, page 178, knowledge of true self. It says, thus the long journey of the soul consists in developing from animal consciousness the explicit self-consciousness as a limited I, then in transcending the state of the limited I of human consciousness through the medium of the master. So this reminds me of another quote that Baba says, man has gone from age of animal instinct to the age of analytical reasoning mind. Now this is the age of intuition, heart. So, so the basically from the intuitive heart, then you have inspiration, illumination, and realization, which is the transcending from the duality of lover and the beloved to actually becoming I am God state. Jai Baba.
Awesome. Thank you. So,
Karthik, if I can just add just one observation is that the part which Kama read about the provisional working ego, we can directly correlate it with the seventh reality, complete surrender. The real surrender, I mean, the real surrender. So,
correct.
So I
very good point.
Request, and I request everybody to, in this journey of linking up each paragraph with the 7 realities, if they could put their thoughts on Trello, or we could discuss it while we are reading. Would that be a good way of linking the 7 realities with the discourses?
Sure.
Another point I just wanted to make, Jai Baba, when I just read that provisional working ego, there was one line which said, there are thus 2 types of ego. One that can only add to the limitations of the soul, and the other that helps it toward emancipation. Interestingly, I was thinking about the real ego and false ego, which we were discussing. So here Baba is bringing this provisional ego as the intermediary between the real ego and false ego. What do you guys think? Is that a fair statement to say? The provisional working ego becomes the intermediary between the real ego, which is the God realized state, and the false ego, which is our limited I self. So this provisional working ego is a kind of an intermediary state that one needs to develop to become entirely subservient to the master before one gets transcended to the 7th plane. Yeah, Baba.
I think that's a very good point.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Ashwin.
So, my financial, whatever my financial way of thinking, so between raw material and finished goods, it's a work in progress.
अशोक क्या बात है यार.
Provisional ego, the provisional ego, that is when we have a regular ego, that means before we came into Baba or acquired the knowledge, we have our own ego. And once we start loving Baba, we acquire the provisional ego. And then as we gain the experience of this provisional ego and loving Baba, that becomes our ego. The ego is the last one that is taken out of us before we cross the sixth threshold, sixth plane threshold. That's what my thinking, Karma.
So the provisional ego is the struggle in the path of spirituality. How we mold ourselves, modify ourselves, and then try to give up certain things, try to add valuation to certain new things, and then grow along the path, and then realize the ultimate.
Exactly.
So that is the developing provisional ego.
Because once we when we are at the threshold of the sixth plane, we have to be perfect. Then only any perfect master will be able to give us God realization. So we have to cross that even provisional ego. That has to become the ego. Then has to become that ego. That ego required whatever it is to cross the threshold. That's all. The provisional ego is for us to transform from our old ego I-ness to the surrender state.
Universal ego. Okay.
Jai Baba.
Yeah, I've been fascinated with this concept for quite some time, and I think this reading has really helped me relate to it. I think to rephrase what Mamaji said, I think it's not a struggle. It's almost like a position of freedom that you can move to if you're able to get to that provisional working ego. The struggle is getting there, maybe. So you're right. So, but it allows you to act with freedom that is not there in your old ego. And in that sense, it's surely aspirational for all of us, and I think we should try to get to that state. Though that is as Kama put it, that's true loving Baba, right? And then that if you're able to move it to that level, then Godspeed to you.
Loving Baba everybody has got their own way. We cannot say this should be the way of loving God. Everybody have got their own way of loving Baba. We cannot judge.
So
hey, this is not right. This is right. This is my way is correct, or this way is correct. We cannot say that. However many there is in God Speaks, right? There is who is that perfect master? I keep forgetting his statement. How many ways are there to realize God? However many people are there, that many ways of realizing God. Yeah.
But Ravi, isn't it a fact that loving God is about relationships in our waking state?
Yes. I agree with you with that.
There are unique ways of relating to different people. Each one of us, the way I relate to Karthik and the way you relate to Karthik will be different, of course, because we know the real life self in each one of us. But what I'm saying is that my point here is that when we talk about loving Baba, that is an expression of phrase. But the practical reality is, how are we doing it in our day-to-day life? So I was just using those different 7 awakenings like My Wish and all those things as a kind of a template, Of course, we are all going to love Baba in our own way, absolutely, because of our sanskaras. On another point, when we were talking about that constructing new ego that I was reading from page 254, it says, before beginning anything, the aspirant thinks that it is not he who is doing it, but the master who's getting it done through him. After doing the task, he does not tarry to claim the results of action or enjoy them, but becomes free of them by offering them to the master. Now, these two lines relate to Baba's My Wish, that first four postulates: do not shirk your responsibilities, attend faithfully to your worldly duties, but keep always in the back of your mind that all this is Baba's. When you feel happy, think Baba wants me to be happy. When you suffer, think Baba wants me to suffer. Be resigned to every situation and think honestly and sincerely, Baba has placed me in this situation. With the understanding that Baba is in everyone, try to help and serve others. Jai Baba.
Yes, Kamaji, Jai Baba. I think this message of Baba is the one which drives everything. And for executing this message, you need that provisional ego. You know, the implementation needs that thought. That provisional ego
Absolutely.
is needed. Yeah.
Correct.
It's like walking. You must know where to step, where not to step. Also needs that provisional understanding. Or that is the ego that we are talking about. Choosing the right path. Yeah. Jai Baba.
Yeah, it's all coming together, right? What surrender is, what love is, how it's helping you make progress and so on. But everybody has his own way.
So in that sense, provisional working ego also is a tool or a scaffolding, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
The very use of the word provisional confirms that. And
Yes,
as he
yes.
said, it's a transitional phase, like Kama put it. I think that was a beautiful one, right? So you go from the false to the real, and you need that to make that progress, to deal with your demons, right? And lead your life, because without that you cannot lead your life. So you get a temporary locus, a temporary frame of reference, and a freedom to act and freedom to progress spiritually, and make the move to make the final transition, right?
Can I ask?
Also, the acronym LOSS, love, obedience, surrender, sacrifice to Baba. So, in a way, the initial state is loving Baba. Now, the question is how to love Baba. So, I think obedience comes where you have to know the postulates that Baba has given us in his messages, the 7 awakenings, my wish, 7 realities, and so on. So, there, the theoretical aspect, the obedience aspect, how can you be obedient to the perfect master, to Meher Baba? So we have that, the 7 realities and so on. Then the third stage comes, which is the surrender, which is where I believe that provisional working ego kind of helps in the process. Hey, Baba.
Can I ask a question?
I think the obedience part also needs the provisional ego, that I have to make myself commit to. When I say I have to make myself commit to and obey what he has said, even if I am not that, I'm not able to understand the significance of that message, I will do it. So that is the provisional ego which will be there. And when it ultimately goes into the surrender mode, even the provisional ego is kind of shed off, because you put aside your mind from what the master wants you to do. And that's the ultimate surrender. He says it's day, it's day, it's night, it's night. So that is the ultimate surrender that Baba has given examples of. Jai Baba. That's my take on this. Yeah. Jai Baba.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Vipul. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm still a learner, learning a few things. Can the decisions made by intellect, a rational decision, can I also accept them as Baba's decision or ego's decision?
See, whenever you have a situation, you make a decision. Thus, you have to make a decision.
Correct.
And then you act on it, right? Once you make a decision, you act on it.
Correct.
And best thing is before acting, and as Baba described in the discourses, think it is Baba who is doing it, who is going to do this. Offer everything before. And then do a perfect job. Do the best job to please Baba. And do it for Baba. And then after doing it, think it is Baba who has done it. Offer all the result to him. Then you are fine.
Fine.
That is how we have to do it. But that is not easy. That is not easy. It's a lifelong practice because we are involved in so many actions, starting from brushing my teeth in the morning to drinking coffee, going to work and doing the work. I have to do this. My boss tells me to do this. I have to do this and then come back in the evening. There are so many actions we are involved. So how do we remember to do this? One way is to train the mind. Second way is keep chanting Baba's name, remembering him wholeheartedly as much as possible. Then you can remember any action you do, just remember Baba, give it to him. That is the word. Jai Baba.
Thank you.
Jai Baba. I think following up with what Ravi said, my own process, I would say, to answer your question, in a very clinical sense, one is about the sanskaric aspect, because what are we really trying to do, being born as a human being? Not to get brownie points, but actually manonash, right? Starting from a top-down approach, which means about eliminating the ego and sanskaras. And you are asking a very practical question. As a human being, we have a material life and spiritual life, which are intertwined. Ideally, we want to lead a material life in a spiritual way, right? Now, the question is that an example is like, for example, a person, graduates from college, and let's say you're graduating from the Ivy League school and you have a couple of job offers, and what happens is, how do you make a choice which job to take? Now, one of the things I look at is, I say like three things when you try to join a job you look at. One is, do you like the job function? Number two, do you like your boss? And number three, do you like the company? Okay, the industry, of course. And then what happens is you have to look at the probability. It is always a clash between mind and heart, the analytical reasoning mind and the heart intuition. So as Baba said, when he talks about significance of male and female incarnation, that balancing of mind and heart, but heart always precedes the mind. So if there is a 60-40 probability where 60% intuition and 40% is mind, and the other job is vice versa, then by logic, you want to go towards the 60% intuition, where the feeling is good, So I think that is one way of approaching the situation. And because the intellect is being used, yes, of course, but that means intellect is the mind, but you also want to see intuitively how you feel. See, I didn't know all this. I wish I had known all this when I was studying, but better late than never. I got to know about these aspects in my 40s. And so I think one is the contextual aspect, one is about practical reality, and second is idealism. And third is, of course, the most important is sanskaric aspect. Is it an intelligent action? Are you spending sanskaras, creating fresh new unintelligent action, spending sanskaras and creating fresh new sanskaras? Or it's an intelligent action where you're responding to a situation in a very practical sense, because Baba was all about practicality, So that's my take on it, Jai Baba.
Thank you.
If I would like to put it in a different perspective, the same thing, what has been told now. Say, if you take ourselves as a group as an example, so what we would have done in a particular contextual situation and what we think we will do now, there may be a difference. So intellectual dictates at some level. So that is dependent on your sanskara, your say the life process that you have gone through. And then the modification of that intellectual reasoning with some other valuation inputs coming from all your study with spirituality or say Baba's messages and convincing ideas that Baba has given you, you may not take that intellectual decision what came to your mind. You may modify that in a different way. That the push that is given for modification is an intuition. You can think it in terms of an intuition. So like that, you keep progressing every time. The intellectual gives you some drive, and then your reasoning and then the intuitive process tries to modify that. So this struggle between these two is the struggle, or as Karthik said, it is the happy struggle that we are going through in this spiritual path. So we keep modifying our intellect or the decisions of the intellect, which is driven more by ego and sanskara uh, in a different way because of our understanding of the valuations that we add to each of our activity. Jai Baba. That is how I look at it.
Thank you, Jai Baba.
Brilliant. I think that was a good example of seeing it in the practicality of what we are going through right now. I just have one more thing which I've referred to in the past. I think all this becomes a lot more easier if you have you are in the mode of a disciple with a living perfect master at close quarters, because the effort that is required from the disciple is actually far lesser as long as the adjustment is there, as long as the alignment and the adjustment is there. It becomes almost effortless, because here you bet on intuition where you may be wrong. You may be hallucinating. You may be betting on the another aspect of the false valuation imposed by your intellect, right? And you may credit it to Baba. You may credit it to intuition wrongly, and I think that we will not face if you have a living perfect master. And I hope, I mean, it's not. There's little we can do there, but what do we? I don't know. It's just despondent me accepting the reality.
Yes, yes, that is
Uh,
a real input because we may say flounder at certain points, certain times, even our say
So-called intuition.
so-called intuition, yes, possibilities are there.
Yes,
So this is
yes.
a constant, say, struggle, or you don't want to call that a struggle. Anyway, constant effort that we put up, intelligent, to do an intelligent action, as
It's
Ashok
the
would put it. Yes.
Yeah, Kama, you're saying
uh,
something.
Jai Baba, yeah, Jai Baba, I think following up to what you just said, which I think is very relevant. Ideally, if all of us had a perfect master or Baba in front of us in physical form, and you go right to him and meet him and he advises you, that is the most ideal aspect to having a, like you said, a perfect master in human form. Now, what the second aspect is, secondary aspect to it is, since he's not in human form, he's formless, of course, we have this discourses as a kind of a manual which helps us to refer and understand when clarify doubts, like what we are doing. And the other thing is also, Vipul, there's a chapter which we have already read called the Avenues of Understanding. And I don't want to waste anybody's time here, but with page 97 to 98, there are 3 paragraphs. The subtitles are Conditions for Harmony Between Mind and Heart. Heart must be free to determine ends of life. And harmony of mind and heart implies cooperative functioning. So I'm just going to read 2 lines, but you can definitely refer to that. It's page 97 and 98. Spiritual understanding is born of harmony between mind and heart. This harmony of mind and heart does not require the mixing up of their functions. It does not imply cross-functioning, but cooperative functioning. Their functions are neither identical nor coordinate. Mind and heart must, of course, be balanced, but this balance cannot be secured by pitting the mind against the heart or by pitting the heart against the mind. It can be attained not through mechanical tension, but through intelligent adjustment. Mind and heart may be said to be balanced when they serve their proper purpose and when they perform their respective functions without erring this way or that. It is only when they are so balanced that there can be true harmony between them. Such harmony of mind and heart is the most important condition of the integral, undivided life of spiritual understanding. So, Jai Baba.
Yes.
I will send you guys, I think probably Karthik had got it. What I did one day was to compile all the words, the word called adjustment. So I compiled it from different books and I will send it on. Karthik, can you just put it on a document if I've sent you by email? Yeah.
Kama, I have a question. You just said when mind and heart serve its true purpose, the harmony is attained, right?
Yes.
So, what are the true purpose of mind and what is the true purpose of heart? Maybe I've forgotten, so just wanting some more elaboration here.
I think that from my understanding, mind is part of evolution and it has its purpose like a scaffolding, especially for the material life. One needs to use one's mind, the intellect. For example, when you are using your smartphone, you need to use your mind to understand how it works and how to utilize it for your day-to-day living. Whereas heart is about, let's say you're traveling and there is a family decision, everybody wants to go to different places. And so, we kind of use our analytical reasoning mind and chalk out what are the different aspects of a particular place that we are interested in, and then, somehow you come to 1 or 2, 3 choices, and you have to then use your intuitive heart to figure out, where do you feel, you know, um, you know, for example, even with like house hunting, let's say real estate, when we go see different houses to rent or buy, I've noticed that, I've been very lucky somehow in real estate, not in my investments, unfortunately. But, you can actually feel, yes, this is it, love at first sight kind of thing. So I think it's very contextual and what you're doing at that time, especially with your material life, Yeah, Baba.
Yeah, I would like to say the same thing. What Kama said is for all the worldly things, we have to use intellect, figuring out things, how to live life, and all that stuff. For the spiritual matters, we have to use the love. Love is the main channel of understanding the spiritual stuff and everything. That has to be balanced. That's what it says in the avenues of understanding. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, one sorry. Just to answer your question, it's already there in that page number 98, where Baba says, mind is the treasure house of learning, but the heart is the treasure house of spiritual wisdom. The so-called conflict between religion and science arises only when there is no appreciation of the relative importance of these two types of knowledge. It is futile to try to glean knowledge of true values by exercise of the mind alone. Mind cannot tell you which things are worth having. Mind can only tell you how to achieve the ends accepted from intellectual sources. So let me repeat this. Mind cannot tell you which things are worth having. Mind can only tell you how to achieve the ends accepted from intellectual sources. In most persons, the mind accepts ends from the prompting of wants, but this means denial of the life of the spirit. I believe he's talking about desires. I have an acronym for it, LCDWAS. L for longing, A for attachment, sorry, LCD, longing, craving, desires, wanting, attachment, seeking. So, renunciation of desires. So, only when the mind accepts its ends and values from the deepest promptings of the heart does it contribute to the life of the spirit. Thus, mind has to work in cooperation with the heart. Factual knowledge has to be subordinated to intuitive perceptions, and the heart has to be allowed full freedom in determining the ends of life without any interference from the mind. The mind has a place in practical life, but its role begins after the heart has had its say. So I believe this is very clear that don't take any decisions without involving the heart, and the heart should always give you the right decision. Jai Baba.
Sunil.
Thank you. Thanks. Yes.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to check if that answers your question.
It's quite dense, but on the way. Thank you, Jai Baba.
Just listen to the wife on a lighter note.
Sure. Just go ahead, Karthik. Yeah, I got it. Thank you, Jai Baba.
Okay, so from there, with all this thoughts of what is so-called intuition, we get to a provocative topic, which is the next chapter, which is place of occultism in spiritual life. So let's try to understand what Baba says on this. There are multiple parts to this. The first one is the value of occult experiences. Subtitle: Psychic capacities help or hinder emancipation. The spiritual path leading to the emancipation of consciousness brings with it an unfoldment of many psychic capacities which are latent in the human soul. This unfoldment increases the scope and range of human consciousness. These new elements often play an important part in helping or hindering the spiritual emancipation of consciousness. Therefore, the aspirant not only has to understand the value of such experiences as unusual and significant dreams, visions, astral journeys, and glimpses of the subtle world, but he also has to learn to distinguish real occult experiences from hallucinations and delusions. So there's we already encountered the, okay, there's a asterisk right on the title. In the following three parts, occult and occultism are generally used in the broadest sense to mean hidden or beyond the range of ordinary experience, but in certain contexts they mean more specifically psychic or supernatural. Next subtitle: Contempt for occult born of ignorance. Although it is customary to exaggerate the importance of occult experiences, it's not uncommon to doubt their validity and to treat them with the contempt usually accorded to all forms of mental aberrations and abnormalities. The attitude of unqualified contempt for occult experiences is, of course, most pronounced in those who are not even abecedarians in direct knowledge of the occult. Holy cow, what is that now? Let's look at
ABCDarians. That is very elementary. ABCDarians.
That's what it means.
At the level of ABCD, is it? So what is the
I don't
actual
know. Let's look it up. Hold on. Worth looking it up.
Looks like that. I think I looked it up once. Kindergartners.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
A person who's learning the letters.
Oh, go ahead.
So spot on, Mama.
I'm an ABCDarian of Baba's knowledge.
So you can remember it like it. ABCDarians.
Yeah, a person who's learning the letters of the alphabet, a beginner in any field of learning.
Yes, sir.
ABCDarian, interesting word.
Interesting word. So I'll just read that line again. ABCDarian. But of course, ABCDarian for Americans means a different thing, but that will stop now. The attitude of unqualified contempt for occult experiences is, of course, most pronounced in those who are not even ABCDarians in direct knowledge of the occult. It hurts the ego to admit and feel that there might be vast, unexplored fields of the universe that are accessible just to a limited number of persons, and from which one happens to be excluded. The undeserved contempt that occultism at times receives is almost always the outcome of profound ignorance about its real meaning. This attitude of contempt is, of course, different from a cautious and critical attitude. Those who have a cautious and critical approach and who are endowed with humility and openness of mind are ever ready to recognize and admit occult phenomena when they occur.
Jai Baba, I think this is a very interesting
Very
paragraph.
profound point. Yeah, go ahead.
Because especially we from the East, Oriental East, now working with the Occidental West, we are definitely influenced in our material life by the Western materialism. That is very obvious. Of course, it's very practical, it's very useful. But when you are reading the current literature and modern physics and all the scientific discoveries, we notice that the Western scientists are so engrossed, and also, sorry if there are any allopathic doctors here, that even people who come through medicine, allopathic medicine training, modern medicine training, they are not open enough to understand that there are these spheres of existence. Today in Kali Yuga, what I observe is that the Western science, of course, has been very powerful because it has given us, improved our quality of life. But we have become so, obsessed and also, influenced by the West, because a lot of these scientists, if nothing can be proved through experiment, which is very important in the gross sphere, then it doesn't exist. I'm not going to believe in any metaphysical or supernatural worlds. So I think this aspect is very influential because I've seen my own friends, I studied in college, who are now so influenced by the West, they won't even have a one-on-one discussion in an open manner, to kind of say, hey, you know what, we come from the East, we have experience, we have seen these kind of things, mystical experiences happening in the East, but they have total contempt. That's what it says. The undeserved contempt that occultism at times receives is almost always the outcome of profound ignorance about its real meaning. So it's a very important line out here that we encounter, because you're like the minority, because you have experienced certain mystical experiences and most people don't believe in it. So you just keep quiet. So I think this is something that many people face, especially when you are just beginning the spiritual path. and you are still trying to figure out, because you have not got 100% conviction, the faith or belief, because it's a transition time. So I feel that this is a very interesting chapter to read, because further on, I mean, I can tell you the thing is basically occultism is an important aspect to be used for spiritual emancipation, not for material, benefit or anything like that. Jai Baba.
So this also gives a broad hint that all that coming from East or say our sphere is not taken at proper true valuation in the West. And because of the historical impact of West over East, so these are taken as part of science and then try to be snubbed out. That is the process we are trying to get out of in the current situation, I think. Jai Baba.
Yeah, agree. So now we'll continue. So I think I like the phrase that it hurts the ego to admit and feel that there might be vast unexplored fields of the universe. I've encountered this all the time, right? When I talk about some of the things on the spiritual path or some of the things of the Eastern realm, then you just encounter disdain and rejection and dismissal, and it's largely driven by ego, right? Anyway, let's continue. Some dreams spiritually significant. An aspirant is usually helped by a perfect master through ordinary means, and the master prefers to take him veiled along the spiritual path. But when there are specific indications, uh, he may also use occult techniques to help the aspirant. Special types of dreams are among the common methods used for touching the deeper life of the aspirant. Masters have not infrequently first contacted aspirants by appearing in their dreams. Such dreams, however, have to be carefully distinguished from ordinary dreams. In ordinary dreams, the subtle body is active in exercising its functions of seeing, tasting, smelling, touching, and hearing. But the soul is not using the subtle body with full consciousness. As these experiences in ordinary dreams are received subconsciously, they are in most cases purely subjective, relating to physical activities and concerning the gross world, and are the creations of nascent sanskaras stored in the mind. In some cases, however, a dream that is indistinguishable from ordinary dreams may be the reflection in the subconscious of some objective experience of the subtle body and not merely a product of fancy. Rare types of dreams. Most dreams are purely subjective and subconscious experiences of the subtle body. They have no special spiritual significance except that they can be occasions for forging new sanskaras or spending up old ones, and that occasionally they shed light upon the hidden complexes and unfaced hidden. Sorry about that. I'll start again. They have no special spiritual significance except that they can be occasions for forging new sanskaras or spending up old ones, and that occasionally they shed light upon the hidden complexes and unfaced problems of one's personality. Such dreams can never include something that is not in some way a part of the past experience of the person. They allow scope for novelty only in respect to new combinations of items that have already appeared in past experience. The rare types of dreams are those about persons and things unknown in this life but known in some past life or lives. Still more rare are the dreams of persons and things that have never appeared in this life or former lives but are going to appear in the future. Ordinary dreams are thus utterly different from dreams that have occult significance. Beginnings of occult experience. Very often, when the aspirant is undergoing psychic unfoldment, he has occasional mystic experiences of the subtle world in the form of significant visions, lights, colors, sounds, smells, or contacts. At first, these experiences are fitful, and the aspirant is likely to treat them as hallucinations. But even when he treats them as hallucinations, he finds it impossible to resist their directive influence because of their intrinsic potency. The spiritual journey, however, becomes more smooth if the aspirant learns to cultivate the right attitude toward occult experiences, which consists in taking them for what they are worth. This balanced attitude is just what the aspirant in the initial stages finds difficult to maintain. Balanced attitude, difficult to maintain. The beginner is apt to exaggerate the importance of his glimpses into the inner worlds and to develop an ungovernable craving for repetition of these experiences. Or he tries to treat them as abnormal phenomena and underrates their significance. Of these two alternatives, the attitude of exaggerating the importance of occult experiences is the most common because the novelty and rarity of occult experiences are factors that contribute to charging them with overwhelming importance. Craving for occult experiences. In fact, the ego of the aspirant tends to become attached to this new field revealed to him, which gives him the sense of being a rare person admitted to an exclusive privilege. The more experiences a person has, the greater scope he desires. He also develops the habit of depending upon occult goading for each step on the path, just as those who take drugs get addicted to them and require stimulation even for doing things that they could formerly do without such stimulation. In order to avoid this pitfall for the aspirant, the master takes good care not to cater to his new craving for occult experiences. Such experiences are vouchsafed to the aspirant if and when they are absolutely necessary for spiritual purposes and not when he wants or asks for them. Dealing with craving for occult experiences. If the aspirant is found to attach undue importance to occult experiences or to develop an ungovernable craving for them, the master might deal with this obstacle in his own way by actually weakening or annulling the occult experiences that have become the basis for such craving. This is like giving immediate relief to a patient by surgical removal of the cause of a physical disorder. It serves the purpose of protecting the aspirant from forging fresh chains for self-limitation. The aspirant must not be allowed under any circumstances to get caught up in false values and futile searching. These can only lead to sidetracking and cause unnecessary delay in achieving the real goal, which is to get initiated into the truly spiritual life. The introduction of the aspirant to occult phenomena is necessarily a very gradual and prolonged process. The master is never anxious to expedite it, as few persons are really qualified to stand the expansion of their experience in this new dimension. Validity of occult experience. In the initial stages, the appearance of occult phenomena is very fitful, and the aspirant sometimes doubts their validity, treating them with caution in order to rule out the possibility of his being deluded. But occult experiences often bear unmistakable credentials of their own validity. Even when any such credentials are not evident, they compel due respect and attention because of the unusual significance, bliss, peace, and directive value with which they are surcharged. Mainly because of these characteristics, the aspirant is able to distinguish real occult experiences from hallucinations and illusions.
Jai Baba, I think that the first two paragraphs of the chapter was about defining occult. Then the next two paragraphs was about dreams. Okay, that dreams, there are different types of dreams, and so that was very, and not to give too much importance to dreams. Having the vision of a perfect master is fantastic. That's a kind of a reinforcement. But I think that when you started reading page number 181, the beginnings of occult experience, balanced attitude, difficult to maintain, craving for occult experiences, dealing with craving for occult experiences, validity of occult experience. I think this relates to the subtle world, the subtle sphere of existence. If you go back to God Speaks, the T cube, touch, taste, sorry, T square S cube, the five physical sensations, touch, taste, sound, smell, sight. So when the spiritual aspirant begins his journey between the first plane to the fourth plane, which is part of the subtle sphere of existence, so what we notice is that sound, smell, sight, these three things of the subtle world are very prominent. They are much more finer than what we experience in the gross world. If you remember the heaven and hell state, there you actually learn about how these sensations are experienced when you go into the astral world, because there you're using your astral body and you become much more sensitive. But what is relevant out here in this reading, in this paragraphs, is that not to get addicted to occult experience, because when you're in the spiritual path, suddenly you'll start getting certain what we call siddhis, right? And that is where I think many spiritual aspirants who also through spiritual delusion or maya think they have become self-realized, because they can probably have different kinds of premonition, all those psychic abilities. And that is why Baba has always emphasized not to give importance to occult experiences. Use them for your own spiritual emancipation, or if you are helping somebody in their spiritual path, it's a good thing to do, and not to use it for material purposes. And so I think this is part of the what you call, Baba calls it real illusion, because reincarnation state, which is in the gross sphere of existence, is called false illusion. And then once you are in the spiritual path between the first plane to the sixth plane, Baba calls it real illusion. And this is where we know that in the fourth plane is the most dangerous plane. Unless you cross the fourth plane, you're not yet there. Then you're on the other side of the fence. So the bottom line is not to get, the human mind is very chanchal, it gets attracted to miracles and, stuff, people having occult, like such as Baba would give a watch to the rich guy and vibhuti to the, not so rich guy kind of thing. So of course, they also play a role in bringing people. In fact, one of the things that I have read is the positive side of an advanced spiritual aspirant or even a perfect master using miracle is to bring that aspirant towards the spiritual life. But most people are attracted more towards the material aspects. Like I think Must Muhammad, before he came to Baba, I think in Bombay, all these people who used to play the commodity markets and all would go to him, and because he had that that occult facility, the siddhis, which horse would win or which particular trade you should do, and so on and so forth. Jai Baba.
Karthik, we need to reread the validity of occult experience because of its importance, and then try to understand it better.
Okay. That's where we were, right? Yeah. I'm rereading validity of occult experience. In the initial stages of the appearance of occult phenomena is very fitful, and the aspirant sometimes doubts their validity, treating them with caution in order to rule out the possibility of his being deluded. But occult experiences often bear unmistakable credentials of their own validity. Even when any such credentials are not evident, they compel due respect and attention because of the unusual significance, bliss, peace, and directive value with which they are surcharged. Mainly because of
Karthik, these two sentences need some explanation. I don't understand them so clearly. Can anyone explain this? Unmistakable credentials. What are those? Any examples of these credentials which indicate that these experiences are the betterment of your spiritual growth?
Good question. I'm trying to think of an example, but I do not know. Anybody else? Something that, yeah, go ahead, Kamal.
My own understanding, I mean, it's a very, I think it's a very good question because of the way the sentence is framed. The only way I can think of is, again, when there are two advanced, let's say, spiritually advanced aspirants between the first plane and the third or fourth plane, and let's say they have the certain siddhis, okay, and what happens is that there are two options here for those spiritual advanced aspirant. One person can actually, let's say he is under the umbrella of Baba and he knows that the siddhi that I'm having should only be used for specific purposes, especially of the spiritual kind. Whereas the other person, his ego takes over, what we call as the spiritual ego, and what happens is you get tempted to use your siddhis to get fame, to get, and suddenly you lose your path. Okay. So what happens is here you have two individuals on the same path, having probably same siddhis, but one is able to understand that this is just an intermediary thing, whereas the other person, because of Mayavic ignorance or sanskaras or his own power of choice or free will, it takes the negative path because it's very tempting, right? I can resist everything but temptation, fame, name, and this thing happens. So I believe that this line, but occult experiences often bear unmistakable credentials of their own validity. I think we have seen, especially for physical health, you have heard in Latin America and all that, people can cure, there are people who have this ability. Even in India, we have seen, there was this case of corona in Andhra Pradesh. I read somewhere, like, somebody who could give something, whatever, and India and many other, Latin American countries, there are certain people who have certain, especially for health purposes, certain siddhis, which they are able to cure, and I think that is done for a good purpose. But also, I think it is to give both the person who has this ability that this is a gift of God. It is not something to boost your ego, but the ultimate purpose of goal of this is self-emancipation. And for the receiver, the patient who goes to this particular so-called quack, whatever, but he gets cured, it helps that person to actually think that, yes, there is something supernatural, there is something beyond my material life, I have got cured. So it would help them in their spiritual path. So I think even when many such credentials are not evident, they compel due respect and attention because of their unusual significance, bliss, peace, and directive value with which he has surcharged. So this could also be like somebody you go and talk to, like, advanced spiritual aspirant. A lot of people will go and talk about their material problems. Like in the West, you go to the psychiatrist or a psychoanalyst, and in the West, you don't talk to your friends. You go to a psychiatrist. Whereas in India, we'll talk to our friends. Hey, I'm going through this problem. What should I do? So here, typically, people go to a saint and ask them, like, what should I do? So I think the the authentic saint, who has certain siddhis, will be able to understand what's going to happen and guide that person accordingly. So this is my understanding of this particular two lines. Jai Baba.
That is well taken, but my problem is, say we have intellect, we have intuition now and then prompting us to do certain things. Similar to that, how do we identify anything like this, that occult feeling or proddings? How at an individual level, how do we recognize them? What are the credentials for identifying them as occult experiences?
I'll give you a personal life example. I don't take any medicines, okay? I have aches here, I'm also getting old. And I've seen that in the last 4 5 years, what I've done is I actually concentrate, I take, I had this frozen shoulder for about 6 months, believe it or not. And what I did was I used by the time I had learned Kriya Yoga, and I decided to concentrate my energy, prana energy. Okay. And I don't know whether you can call it occult or whatever, but frankly, I'll tell you a lot of my, physical aches, certain things that would happen to me if I sprain myself, I would actually use my own prana power to concentrate, for a minute or two. And I do it a couple of times. And I don't expect when that will get cured. And it has got cured for me. So I don't know whether you call that an occult experience or whether it's the power of the mind. I don't know. This is just my personal example. Yeah, Baba.
Okay, I think it still doesn't answer the question. If I may want to support Mama here, the question is, when you encounter an experience, he specifically seems to suggest there are unmistakable credentials. So, uh, so what are those elements that kind of certify something to be occult and something not to be occult? On the dreams, yes, there are some criteria that's mentioned on what is ordinary dream and non-ordinary dream, right? In the same way, is there something that helps us identify something as occult or not, right? So it might just be something you might take a coincidence to be a occult experience, or you might miss an occult experience like that, so on and so forth. Sanjay has his hands up, so do you want to say something?
See,
Sorry,
I can
Jai
tell
Baba.
you that. Okay, go ahead, Sanjay, please.
Yeah, just a coincidence that we are talking on the subject of occult. My mother just posted me from the Hindi version of Godspeak, that is Ishwar Vani. So it has a reference to a couplet of Kabir, which says, "Sahib ka ghar dur hai, जैसे लंब खजूर, चढ़े तो चाखे प्रेम रस, गिरे सो चकनाचूर." दैट इज, प्रभु का निवास सबसे ऊंचे खजूर के शिखर के समान ऊंचा है, यदि वह उसके ऊपर चढ़ता है तो वह प्रेम का रस चखता है, और यदि गिरता है तो उसकी गर्दन टूट जाती है. सो इट इज दैट व्हाट वी वर जस्ट टॉकिंग, the entanglement on the path. So if he falls from there, he's just dropped dead, goes to the stone stage. Yeah, just a coincidence that she posted it just an hour back. Jai Baba.
Okay.
So, Karthik, what I want to mention is that example of when we found this place where I'm staying in Kunur. Okay.
So is that a coincidence,
Like,
or is that a
yes,
occult
mystical.
experience?
It is a kind of an occult. See, I think that it's a very subjective statement, and it's very relative. Occult experience can be a physical aspect, can be a psychological aspect, can be a mental aspect. For example, if you're seeing a vision, see, occult, it depends on the context. For example, if I'm manifesting, like, for example, matter is called solidified energy, because matter and energy remains the same in the universe. Matter gets converted to energy and energy gets converted to matter. So there are people in those planes who are able to convert energy into matter. Okay. So that is an occult experience. Now, mystical experience and occult experience, there are certain, I'm not able to define that. But to me, I can look at a mystical experience as a form of, maybe occult experiences more towards, things that normal people can't do because they are still stuck in the gross sphere, and people in the subtle sphere have certain skills or certain siddhis, and even the tantric practices, let's call the tantrics, okay, that is an occult practice. If it is used for a good purpose, it's a good thing to have. If it is not used for a good purpose, for a negative way, then it's going to create a problem. So I know this is a very vast subject, because we don't have clear examples what is typically, how to define this particular two lines that Doc Mama asked. Jai Baba.
Yeah, I think it's very subjective, very personal, and then we sharpen our ability to identify and classify. But I think for now, just that's all we can say, right? All right. Anything else before we wind up? We're out of time.
You can refer to the dictionary meaning of occult. I'm just reading from the dictionary, if I may. So,
Sure,
occult is an adjective meaning hidden, secret, only for those with more than ordinary knowledge. Supernatural, magical. And the word mystic, hidden meaning or spiritual power causing feelings of awe and wonder.
Bliss.
Person who seeks union with God and through that realization of truth beyond men's understanding. If this could help, maybe we can rediscuss in the next weekend.
Ashok, thanks very much, because I just saw that we already read it. Page number 181. If you look at the subtitle, Beginnings of Occult Experience. So it says here, very often when the aspirant is undergoing psychic unfoldment, he has occasional mystic experiences of the subtle world in the form of significant visions, lights, colors, sounds, smells, or contacts. At first, these experiences are fitful, and the aspirant is likely to treat them as hallucinations. But even when he treats them as hallucinations, he finds it impossible to resist their directive influence because of their intrinsic potency. So I think that I can tell you another example. There are people who can read other people's mind, they actually know what is happening with that person, or they can, the ability, for example, I've noticed that when I was in Los Angeles in 1989, 1990, when I was near Shrine Place, near where the Oscar Award, University of Southern California. And right next to it is where all the, the African American community, really tough place, in those days, even now. And I got off, the thing is that I got off at the wrong stop, and that place was completely empty. There were houses, and I could feel a negative energy. Okay. I knew that I should not be here, but I had to walk through a couple of blocks. Okay. And of course, this is something, an intuitive thing. For example, when I'm with certain people, I can feel the energy of that person, and especially when it comes to, like, negative energy, I feel that much more profound, so you can call that as a form of psychic ability or whatever, like, so it's a form of occult. It differs from person to person. Jai Baba.
Kama, I would like to comment on your, I had a similar experience. I was teaching Chinmaya Mission, 8th graders. I said the same thing, Interestingly, one young boy who was in the class awakened me. Uncle, what you're saying may be true, but sometimes it can lead you to a wrong way. You may be wrong. You're not 100% sure about intuition, how you formed your opinion about other people. That really awakened me. So we got to be careful unless you are very sure about this negative energy, all these things. Uh, Outwardly, with our mind, we can feel that, but uh, what to say, if I'm in this such situation, instead of depending on my own intuitive feelings or all this stuff, I just remember Baba. That gives me much more confidence than depending on my own feelings. Jai Baba.
Yes, the approach to identify any experience and classify them as intellectual, intuitive, or occult may be a bit subjective and also needs a lot of further insight, I think. Jai Baba.
Yeah.
Jai Baba.
So
Yes. Jai
Jai
Baba.
Baba, you look beautiful.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear.
That's my honest opinion. That's not my aura or intuition or nothing. My visual,
It's just an expression of what you see.
what I see. I believe my senses.
Intuition.
No, senses. My eyesight senses.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, everything we read here moves something inside me, and then I incorporate a little prayer. So, uh, one is over this 1.5 years, I completely submit every action to Baba and do my bit. So I always say my prayer and say, in your divine will, in your divine mercy, Baba, we submit. And I only ask him to allow me to hold fast to his daman till he thinks I'm worthy of being as pure as he is. And I direct all the prayers that he has written to the soul within me, which I feel is either him or will meet him. So I think he is a Sakshi. So I mean, not many of these words get into my head. I think I don't know, but these are changes which I see in me, and and Baba, 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 Baba is always in my heart and ears, and that's thanks to all the knowledge that is going inside. And my Baba looks beautiful, and I know I'm bathing my soul in his love. When I decorate him, I know that when I meditate, I am cleaning up the rubbish in my head where I judge people. And when I think that I'm better than the others, my ego, providential, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know which one is which. But whatever fluff that I'm made up of, I just submit it to him, and I say, allow me to clean it up. And these are conversations between my bigger self and I. So I take, like when we make tea, so you filter it. So out of everything that you say, I just filter some little strands and make it my own. And that's how I am inching like a snail uh, towards myself. Another thing I've incorporated is, the mind always tells you to pick up rubbish from here. Oh, he said that, he said, and you start feeling sad about yourself. Then I tell myself, this body is a temple where Baba resides. So my first job is to keep this body happy, so that my Baba stays in a happy environment. So it's changing a lot in my life. Instead of having these ghosts talking to me rubbish about this person, that person, sizing up opportunities, seizing and flaying everyone for what's wrong in my life, I feel also the things which I find wrong in other people are the things that need to be corrected in me, because they're not even aware of this stupid inner conversation I have and this rubbish I have accumulated in my head. So I see it from the other perspective. I say, these are things Baba needs me to correct. This is just a sharing because I don't understand much of, I mean, because it's Baba's words, so it's very sacred to me. But I can't understand word to word. That's not how I do. And intuition is guiding my entire being, you know. And to be in company of such advanced souls who can compliment me, it is very good. Okay, so that was about me. But Cherry told me to communicate with you that she has a good news to share. She has gotten a job of her choice, and she's on training these days. And I don't know whether she said forever or now, but she said she is not able to join. But she did text me to share this good news with you. So with gratitude to
Very
Baba.
nice, very nice, Jai Baba. So in fact, she's texted me saying that she's going to join tomorrow. So maybe she being on training on Saturdays. So yeah.
All right. So since I was instructed to do this, so I wanted to do my job to the 100% satisfaction. And so in His divine will, in His divine mercy, we submit, and we ask Baba to allow us to hold His beautiful Daman, which is so loving, so giving, and so complete, and help us, at least me, to absorb some more words that become action, and I lose maya towards things I have accumulated, things I want, attitudes which I want changed. Bring that change in me so that I am worthy of becoming one with Baba, either next life or a million after. But I just ask him that he allows me to remember him, even if it is another million lives it takes me to reach him. So that is nirvana in its own way, because I'll still be with him while I'm here. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. I think you must write your own prayer and share.
Yes.
Beautiful words. Love you. Thank you.
To writing poetry. She has written earlier also.
Thank you. Baba bless you. Jai Baba.
Thank you.
We request Baba to keep you in this intellectual confused group.
That's the joke
keep
of the
coming
day.
And that is the good one. Yes. Jai Baba.
All right,
Jai Baba, everyone.
Jai Baba.
All right, Jai Baba, everybody. Have
Jai
a great
Baba.
day. See you all tomorrow.
Tar Meher Baba ki jai.
Avtar Meher Baba ki jai.
Jai Baba. Jai Baba Sunil. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, Sunil, everyone, one and all.
Jai Baba, everyone. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.